everybody. A couple of housekeeping and announcements real quick. This is going to be, first of all, this is a great crowd. Thank you very much for coming, for your interest. It's wonderful. But the other thing is that even though we've got a good crowd here today, many times more people than are in this room are going to be able to hear this or watch this. It is being recorded for radio, for online streaming, and for video online as well. So if people are sharing it, putting it on websites, Facebook, other things, it's going to be heard and or seen by some unknown thousands of people in addition to yourself. So it's going to be helpful if we can move things along, try to stay on time. I know that's often difficult, but your cooperation is appreciated. For example, when we introduce the candidates, we would save your applause until the end. So let me make sure the camera folks are ready. We are? Okay. So I'm Kai Hagen. In this capacity, I'm here as the host of Eye on Our Community on 1450 AM radio, The Source, and we're happy to be a part of this. The event is being... Okay, so I should not look down, apparently. It's going to be a hard time looking. Okay. So the event is being co-sponsored by... Okay, I'm just going to take this off and hold it. By 5 Democratic clubs in the county. The North Frederick County Democrats, the Women's Democratic League, the Frederick County Democrats, the United Democrats of Frederick County, and the South Frederick County Democrats. And if you haven't been aware that we had 5 Democratic clubs in the county, find 1 or 2 of those that is close to you or meets at a good time and get involved with them, because they all have regular meetings, guest speakers, share a lot of information on Facebook and email and other things. It's a very good way to stay up on political things and issues in our community. This will be on air Wednesday on AM 1450 The Source, WTHU, on Eye on Our Community, 5 o'clock. After that, it will be available online for streaming and sharing, and the video will be online as well. And for that, I would like to thank Conrad Weaver of Conjo Studios. He recently won an Emmy, by the way, for a documentary film. And so we're very happy that he's volunteering his services, and we'll have high-quality video as a result. So the way the format is going to work today, I want people to appreciate the challenge of trying to deal with all of the issues that a congressional candidate might talk about, or that you might want to know about, or that they have to deal with when they get elected to Washington, in a format where you have 9 candidates, and where if you even give them 1 minute to answer something about foreign policy, not too complicated, right? That's 10 minutes just for one question. So with a long list of issues that matter to everybody, their background experience, the economy, the environment, foreign policy, civil rights, immigration, criminal justice, gun control, campaign finance, health care, you name it, I could go on. We have to narrow down the list, and we're trying to do that in the context of a Democratic primary. What will give you a sense of what distinguishes them, not from the Republicans in the race, but maybe from each other. It gives them an opportunity to share a little bit about themselves, their experience, their background. So we weren't originally going to do an introductory statement, but I didn't feel bad springing it on them, and I asked for their permission because they've all been campaigning for a while now. So I'm just going to very quickly go down the line and introduce them by name in alphabetical order, and then we will hear, each one of them is going to do a 2-minute introduction. Then we'll have a series of 1-minute questions, and in between we're going to have one way to try to get at some of those other issues is we're going to have something called rapid fire questions. It's not just a yes, no, but it's basically 1 or 2 sentences, that's it, and out. We try to ask questions where that's reasonable to actually do and might help you at least get some sense of some of the differences on some issues. So please hold your applause to the end, but I'd like to welcome David Anderson, Kumar Barve, David Bowling.
Dan.
Oh, I'm sorry, Dan. Sorry. Dan Bowling.
That's my brother.
Oh, I'm glad it's in the family. Anna Sol Gutierrez, Will Jawando, Kathleen Matthews, Jamie Raskin, Joel Rubin, and David Trone. So please welcome our candidates. also like to thank Mark Long, who is sitting in the front center with the lollipops. And I want them to bring particular attention to him, to our candidates. This is only going to work, and we're only going to get all the questions in if people do their very best to stay within the time constraints and finishing up beyond seeing the red lollipop with just, a sentence or so to complete a phrase or whatever. We really appreciate it. So with 15 seconds left, he's going to start waving, not too vigorously, the yellow lollipop. And when you see the red lollipop, it means stop.
And we're finishing at 5 p.m., is that right?
No. we're gonna do all of this in about an hour and 30, hour and 40 minutes, and then there'll be some time left for people to answer questions from the audience. And then beyond that, anybody who wants to linger, candidates or people in the audience, a chance to schmooze a little bit, meet some of the candidates. I also want to point out, if you haven't noticed, they all have campaign material here, so we can only cover so much of the world of issues that are out there, and we encourage everybody to find out more by going to their websites, reading their campaign materials, and finding out things from other sources of information as well. So, having said that, we're going to start the first time with David. Are you ready? Mark, are you ready?
Is this 1 minute?
2 minutes. 2 minutes. We're going to just have a 1 minute close at the end instead. So they've all gotten used to doing this for a while. So, David.
Thank you. It is a pleasure to be here. The writers covering this race have said all the candidates sound the same, except for Anderson. The Washington Post has said Anderson is the lone dissenting voice. So I've criticized my distinguished colleagues for really being too far on the left wing of the Democratic Party. Now, I've been campaigning all over this county. I have been to 9 towns, actually, 26 times. I've campaigned in Frederick, in Emmitsburg, in Thurmont, in Walkersville, in New Market, in Jefferson, in Middletown, in Ballinger Creek, and in Braddock Heights. And I've been talking to the voters and getting very good response to my views. The Frederick News Post says Anderson wants to make Frederick County count. Now, there are 2 specific ideas I want to discuss right now that relate to Frederick County. The centerpiece of my campaign is a national family policy which would provide hard-working young middle-class families with a choice once a baby is born. Either 6 months of paid parental leave plus $10,000 of child care support for 3 years, or 6 months of paid parental leave and a tax credit for a stay-at-home mom or a stay-at-home dad. And this includes families with 2 moms and 2 dads. The tired, traditional, liberal view is to only support paid leave and child care. But this approach neglects stay-at-home moms and stay-at-home dads. So I stand up for both sides. Now, the second idea I want to discuss with you is about economic development and job creation. And I introduce it today for the first time. There's been an effort for years, going back to World War II, but accelerated after 9/11, to locate federal emergency centers throughout the D.C. area. In fact, you have the Emmitsburg Center here. Is that the red for done? Well, I want to bring more federal agencies up here. You have problems transporting yourselves to Montgomery to get to federal agencies. I want to bring more up here for job creation.
Thank you, David. Kumar?
Well, hello, Frederick Democrats. It's great to be up here. I've been coming up here for quite some time. I like to tell people that I come from a long line of fighters and a long line of people who've had to overcome obstacles, as many of the people in this room might have had to. My grandfather came to this country. He fought against British rule in India. He was kicked out of the country for that. He came to this country in 1911, became a research scientist for General Electric, and he and his colleagues invented much of the TV technology, all of the TV technology we use today. And he became a citizen, was proud to do that, and within 3 years, he and every other Indian American man was stripped of their citizenship because they weren't white. He fought all the way back up to the Supreme Court and secured his rights as an American. Fast forward then to the 1960s, and I grew up at a time when kids were picked on if they if they were a different religion, being a Hindu as I was, and I had to learn to overcome that in the Montgomery County public school system where I grew up. Fast forward to the late 1980s, I became one of the first, actually the first man to serve on the board of the National Abortion Rights Action League in Maryland, and then became, 4 years after that, the first person of Indian origin elected to any state legislature in America. I then later served as majority leader, and during that time, I really used a lot of that life skill and family skill of fighting against people who intersect with our interests. I fought against insurance companies. I fought against the oil and gas industry to basically place a moratorium on fracking. I closed $200 million in corporate tax loopholes so that we could freeze tuition at the University of Maryland system for 4 years. Now, I want to talk about all of these things. Before I do want to mention the fact that my beautiful wife, Commissioner Maureen Quinn, is sitting in the back there. Maureen, there she is, and get to know her as well. So again, great to be up here in Frederick, as I have been so many times.
Thank you, Kumar. Dave, this is from the Montgomery Sentinel. At a time when candidates running the Democratic primary for Maryland's 8th Congressional District have shown little difference in policy positions, newcomer Dan Bowling is campaigning as an outsider to his own party. So just so you have the full record there.
He just joined.
We all know that Congress is broken. Now, one evidence of that, if you will go to website govtrack.us and type in the words family leave or equity for women or paid family leave, any of the issues important to women, you'll find that there are 20 to 40 bills that have been introduced in this session of Congress that are not going anywhere. GovTrack is expert at predicting the passage of bills. And if you look, you'll see that these are assigned a 1%, 2%, 3% chance of passage. And if you look at the reasons for that rating, the most commonly given reason is that, and this is a precise quote, the bill was sponsored by a member of the minority party. This is what happens when political parties control our legislature. Now, on my website, you'll find links to NPR and Politico and The Atlantic that have been writing about a proven model for, and you will not believe me, for reforming Congress to take the partisanship out and replace it with an evidence-based procedure for voting on bills. And I know everyone is skeptical, so don't believe me. Go on my website, read Atlantic, read NPR, read Politico, and then tell me if you still think it's impossible to reform Congress. Everything on the Democratic agenda will be accomplished more easily when we dial down the partisanship. Thank you, Mark.
She's got a microphone.
Hello, hello. Is it on?
It's on.
It is? Mm-hmm. Oh, you can, really? You don't hear the echo. Hello, my name is Anna Sol Gutierrez, and there we go, now it's on. And I'm delighted to be here with you. I'm so glad that so many of you have come out, because these are the opportunities that you can hear us in our own voices bring to you who we are and where we stand on the issues. So I'm going to try to be very brief about introducing myself and try to hit some key spots, and later on we can perhaps deal with some of the serious issues before us. I am a state delegate. I've been in the state assembly in the House for 14 years. I've served now 10 years on the appropriations doing budgets. I'm a budget person, and that's what I want to do when I go to Congress, because budgets are the most important policy document we can ever make. I served also 4 years in judiciary and learned a lot about what it is that are civil crimes, other crimes, and a lot of very important issues. I learned also that to pass legislation is not an easy thing. It takes many years and much negotiation and much convincing to make sure that you can pass a bill. And at the state level, no one person passes a bill. It's a collective effort. So I've been very happy to be part of a Maryland General Assembly that's done amazing things. Starting from passing the death penalty, repealing the death penalty, which was the first bill I ever heard in judiciary. It took 14 years to, actually 12, because we passed it a little while ago. Just quickly, I am originally from El Salvador, an immigrant. I am a woman, a very progressive, democratic woman who's been fighting for women's rights and for issues that protect the right of women to choose. I fight for seniors. I'm a fighter. So I hope that you'll listen to our voices, and hopefully I can win your support. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Will Jawando, and it's good to see you out here. I got to visit my mom before I came over here. She lives in Manchester and is watching two of my 3 daughters today. So thank you for giving me that excuse. She would like that to happen more often. So I stand up here today humbled to be here, really, because my story is pretty unlikely, but it's also uniquely American. My dad came from this country, from Nigeria, fleeing a civil war, which we still see as one of the primary reasons people come to America, fleeing violence or persecution in their home country. And my mom was born and raised in Kansas, in a little farm town, kind of like Thurmont, Hays, Kansas, and moved east after she met my dad, who got a scholarship to come and go to school in Hays, Kansas, because the factories had shut down and there wasn't economic opportunity where she lived. Another uniquely American story. So I stand here today, having been born and raised in Silver Spring, the product of that union, and very, very blessed in my life to have a lot of opportunity. But I'm aware, and have always been aware, that opportunity is not equal. When I was 12 years old, one of my best friends that had gone up with school with me unfortunately lost his life to gun violence. This is how I got into public policy, because I started to realize that it was systemic factors that impacted him being in a box and me being at a private high school with a scholarship. He didn't have a scholarship. He didn't have teachers that believed in him. He didn't live in a community that had transportation infrastructure, so his mom couldn't get to the PTA meeting. I started to realize that it wasn't that he was worse and I was better, but that a system and a community didn't support him. And I think it's important to know why people got into politics. I'll tell you what's not represented in Congress now. I've spent a lot of time working there. Worked for Nancy Pelosi, Senator Obama, worked in the White House with President Obama, helped pass the Living Better Act for equal pay, worked on the health care bill. So I know how that system works and doesn't work. But what's not represented is people who are going through the issues that working families are facing. 53% of Congress are millionaires. 90% of our elected officials in this country are white. There is little to no diversity in our Congress and in our political system. That's what we need, and I think it's a factor in a Democratic primary. I look forward to talking about all these issues and more today. Thank you for your time.
Good afternoon. My name's Kathleen Matthews, and it's great to be back here in Thurmont. I was just here last week doing Kai's wonderful radio show, but also knocking on doors in Myersville. And I met so many of the people I see out here in the room in the course of the 9 months of this campaign, whether it was at Color Fest here in Thurmont, or at the Frederick in the Streets, or having lunch with Beverly Byron at the Shamrock one afternoon, and also your fantastic county executive, Jan Gardner, who I see back in the room, who's just a wonderful leader for your area up here. So thanks to the Democratic clubs for bringing us all together. Wonderful turnout for a Saturday afternoon. I'm running for Congress because, like so many of you, I have just been so frustrated by the gridlock in this Congress caused by Republicans who basically have tried to prevent President Obama from having any successes during the 8 years of his presidency. It is so frustrating to see them right now block his effort to try to appoint a Supreme Court justice, which is his constitutional right, or to see them trying to roll back the Affordable Care Act, or roll back reproductive rights for women, to refuse to look at issues like a living wage, immigration reform, gun safety laws. These are such important things, and these are issues that animate my campaign. I worked for many years, 25 years, as a local news reporter, and actually spent a lot of time up here in Frederick County because this was part of the ABC 7, Channel 7 viewing audience. So whether it was in Thurmont or Emmitsburg, I've been in your communities for years covering your stories, covering your schools, covering crime. I was here covering the sniper crisis, which ended up here, fortunately, with the capture of those two criminals up here in Frederick County. So I know the issues that you've been wrestling with and the priorities you have. But I also believe that we're all running for the House of Representatives. And the House of Representatives today is not representative. The House of Representatives is only 20% women, and yet our population is more than half women. Look at the women in this room. And so for me, that's an animating fact. I believe we need more women in Congress, and that's why I got off the sidelines and into the arena of this campaign.
Hello, everybody. My name is Jamie Raskin. I am the state senator for Silver Spring and Tacoma Park. I'm a professor of constitutional law for 25 years at American University, and I've been in the state senate for a decade, and I'm a majority whip for the Democrats. It's very good to be back here in Thurmont and to be campaigning in Frederick County again. My friend Ken Kerr and Ken and Helen had a wonderful party where we brought the great rural agrarian populist Jim Hightower from Texas. I see my friend Susan. Also, we were campaigning in Middletown over the summer where we had a great ice cream social. Middletown is the original ice cream capital of Maryland, and don't forget that. I'm very excited that all of you guys came because this is a democracy and it requires participation and dialogue and discussion. An election is not an auction, and public office is not something you buy, it's something that you earn. And I present my case to the people of the 8th Congressional District based on everything that I've done in public office as a servant for the last 10 years. I was the floor leader for marriage equality. I introduced marriage equality with my friend Senator Rich Madaleno, who's endorsed me, and we got it passed. We introduced the bill to abolish the death penalty. I was the floor leader for that. We got it passed. We banned military-style assault weapons in Maryland, and I introduced that. We got it done. We passed the Green Maryland Act. We got that done. We passed the DREAM Act. We got that done. The Maryland General Assembly has enacted more than 100 of the bills that I've introduced in public office. But I want to go to Washington because the solutions cannot stay within one state alone. We got rid of assault weapons, but we just had the bloodiest summer on record in Baltimore, and a majority of the firearms that were recovered were traced to Virginia, North Carolina, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, out of state. We got the best environmental laws in the country, a lot of them right here, to protect the Chesapeake Bay, but we're getting a D+ from the Chesapeake Bay Foundation because we got 50 waterways that are flowing to Maryland from Pennsylvania and Jersey and New York and so on. We need to take the kind of success that we've had in Maryland to Washington and pass the Maryland way. That's why I want to go to Congress.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Joel Rubin, and I'm thrilled to be here with you. I love coming to Frederick. I'm grateful to be with my colleagues here, all competing for your vote. I'm a progressive champion who gets results in Congress. Most recently, I was the senior official at the State Department, handling the House of Representatives on a variety of issues, including promoting diplomacy with Iran, and winning in that fight in a Republican-led majority Congress. I've been in public service for nearly 20 years. I have the most federal experience of the candidates here. I have essentially been working across all different parts of the federal government and preparing to be able to work on day one in Congress. And we don't have time to waste. We have major fights coming up with the Republicans. We have major fights to ensure that this country is getting back on the right track. In 20 years, for example, Social Security is going to be insolvent. I'm going to turn 65 in 20 years. This is staring right at us. We're going to have another fight about our economic security. Every day we see the Republicans debating about how to strip away our economic security. We need to reverse that trend, and that means taking the fight into Congress. We have a climate crisis right now. I started out my career in public service as a Peace Corps volunteer in the environment. I fought with my hands, with communities against climate change, doing reforestation projects, working in the fields, in the countryside for 2 years in Costa Rica. I know that it can be done, but it takes real work and real leadership. We don't have time to waste. Now, what's going to happen in this campaign is we're going to hear a lot of similar policy proposals. We're going to hear a lot of people advocating for a progressive democratic agenda, and that's appropriate, and that's what should be done. But what I ask of you in this debate and going forward is to think about who's equipped to get it done in the House of Representatives on day one. I am very proud to have won awards for supporting military health care that were bipartisan. I worked as a civil servant in the Bush administration. I know how to work with Republicans, but I also know how to stand up to them, and I'm very excited to talk with you this afternoon about that. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm David Trone, and welcome. First of all, I think you probably feel that the farther you are from Annapolis, the less attention you get, and that's probably true. Myself, along with Dan and David, we're the outside the Beltway group. We have an office here in Walkersville. We have an office in Westminster. Our office in Rockville is also outside the Beltway. We realize that things are different outside the Beltway than they are inside. Part of that comes from where I grew up. Who you are is largely dependent on where you've been. I grew up I was born in Cheverly, Maryland. Both my parents attended University of Maryland. But I grew up on a farm 15 miles north of here. That farm had hard times. It went bankrupt. My dad had a drinking issue. Then I had to start over again. So I started over with my younger brothers, my mom, and went back to school, borrowed money, incurred a lot of debt, and began to build a business. That business today, through luck, but mostly through really great people, just great people, is now in 21 states, and we have over 5,000 people that work for us. But that's what can happen in only America. So this is my opportunity to do something for America that has given our family so much. So we made the decision, my wife and 4 kids, that we're going to run for this office and break some of the gridlock, work not as a Democrat, not as a Republican, but as Americans, across the table, work together to stop the gridlock, but also not take money from the PACs, not take money from the lobbyists. So we're self-financed. I'm using my money. I started with zero. I worked really hard with great people, and I was lucky, absolutely. But it's a different approach. Thank you.
Thank you all for an outstanding set of introductions and for generally doing a very good job on the timekeeping. I don't know how visible that is when you're looking out at everybody, but that was very helpful. I have to take a quick commercial break to say one thing. How many of you have been watching some of the Republican debates? I mean, what a contrast. That's all I can say. What a contrast. We have an embarrassment of riches and a lot of good choices and a civil discussion, and it's really, I don't know what more to say. Of course, you know, there's still time for somebody here to say something. Okay, so the way we're going to do this is we have 2 sets of questions. Some of them are going to be longer questions to give you a full minute. I wish it was more. A full minute to get into as much detail as you can and encourage people to go find out more if you pique their curiosity or their interest. The others are short, and they're only going to work if you really stick to a word, a sentence, 2 really quick sentences at the very most. But they're picked in a way you can quickly qualify it. It doesn't just have to be a yes or no, but it allows us to touch on some other issues that we might not otherwise be able to. So, for example, with the first one, we'll start with Kumar, and we'll just come down this way and then back to David. In a sentence or 2, Kumar, briefly, what endorsement are you most proud of and why?
Oh, I think Unite Here, which is a major union that's endorsed me. These are people who work hard at BWI and National Harbor. Many of them are immigrants, and these are really the people who we as elected officials should really focus on. They're working hard, and their kids have to do great.
Thank you. But really, we're going to try to keep this really short and simple.
Everyone is skeptical when you say you're going to fix Congress. My brother-in-law, Ron Pollock, is the executive director of Families USA that basically constructed Obamacare with the administration. And before he left for 5 weeks overseas, so he can't actually verify this, he said to me, Dan, what you're suggesting is never going to happen, but it's a good idea.
I am most
He's
proud.
wrong about the never going to happen part.
Now?
Yeah.
I'm most proud of the endorsement by the Congressional Hispanic Caucus. I've been working with the Congressional Hispanic Caucus, 26 strong, for many years, working on immigration reform. I have a record with them. I've gotten arrested with them 4 times in front of the White House. Thank you.
Starting off with a tough question.
Tough but quick,
Yes,
short.
I'll say, so 2 people, I'm going to cheat a little bit. Lisa Jackson, who's the former EPA administrator, former Secretary of Education Arnie Duncan under President Obama, both because they've accomplished a ton in Washington in a very polarized time, and recognize that I'm the one who can do that in Washington as well.
I'm really proud to have Beverly Byron behind me, a wonderful congresswoman who represented this area, as representative of the thousands of women who've rallied behind my campaign, and Emily's List, which tries to get more women elected all across this country.
Well, I was going to say Attorney General Brian Frosch, and then I was going to say Teachers Union, then I was going to say AFGE, but instead what I'm going to say is 9 past presidents of the Women's Democratic Club down
Just last week, I got a very exciting endorsement from actor and activist Michael Douglas, who I've worked with for years. He's an advocate for peace, against gun violence, and if you got your AARP magazine this week, which my mother-in-law, who lives with us, did receive, he's on the cover. So for seniors as well.
Starting off would be former Bill Clinton Secretary of Education, Dick Riley. I've been very focused on education. It's really the result of how I've been successful and how others can also be successful. But more importantly than that, it's the hundreds and hundreds of folks that have signed on since the campaign started, all over the 3 counties, that said, let's make a difference.
Thank you. Oh, one more. Sorry.
The endorsement of my wonderful wife, Adrian, and my wonderful daughter, Eden, who's here, and my stepson, Simon, who's in Israel working right now. Those are the ones that matter the most to me. Thank you.
Thank you all. That was not bad, but on the other short questions, we're going to try to keep it really down to 1 or 2 sentences, but that was pretty good. This one, you get a whole minute. See, this way, it's a plot to make a minute seem like a long time. The first question is, and we're going to start with you, Dan, because we started with Kumar on the last one. 39 years ago, President Jimmy Carter said we should approach the energy crisis as the moral equivalent of war. Today, many of us, Democrats anyway, would describe the critical and pressing global issue of climate change similarly. Do you see it that way yourself? And if so, how would your approach to that issue reflect that personal commitment and conviction?
You know, if Ronald Reagan hadn't removed the solar panels from the White House, we might be much further along in the direction that Jimmy Carter tried to get us going all those many years ago. One of my greatest concerns is the movement by fossil fuel companies to try to stymie the wider adoption of solar. And it's quite shocking when a company owned by Warren Buffett in Nevada is right there at the front trying to make it more difficult to finance and to install solar. And I think that in reality, the Koch brothers and the folks like that would be much better off if they realized that renewable is the future. It is their future. And their stockholders ought to put pressure on them to stop investing strictly in a losing technology and be on board on the cutting edge according to their fiduciary responsibilities to their shareholders.
Thank you.
I believe that climate change, what is happening to our planet, is the #1 critical issue facing all of us, not only in the United States, but around the world. I am a chemist and an engineer, and I had the incredible opportunity to work for 10 years at NASA Goddard. I have code on the Hubble. The Hubble was the first time that we took a photograph of ourselves, our planet, that beautiful blue planet that we all love and want to preserve. I also worked on the Earth Observing System. That was the first time that we had metrics of what we were doing to our own environment. And it has been an incredible lesson that we all need to learn. We are destroying our environment, and all of us have to join together. Congress has to take the lead, and we must begin to take this as serious an issue as I believe it is. Thank you.
Short answer is yes, it's a major challenge. I think that and our educational crisis are the two big challenges we face, and they're interconnected. Again, as I said, my last endorsement is a perfect segue. You didn't mean to do it, but I was endorsed by Lisa Jackson, the last, and I think one of the great EPA administrators who put in regulation to curb greenhouse gas emissions on fuel efficiency for cars. Several of these have been upheld by the courts. We have one big one coming that hopefully now we got to get the good person on the Supreme Court will also be upheld. But I think we've made tremendous progress. And the reason this is such an important issue, I have 3 young daughters. I want them to breathe, but I also want for my dad's family in Nigeria, who is now, because of drought and the effects of climate change, you see Boko Haram, an ISIS-affiliated terrorist group, taking over that country. And so this is, it matters here, it matters there, it matters everywhere, and we have to see that as interconnected. It's also a great opportunity for us to grow our economy. If we invest in the green technologies of the future, we'll get young people into the workforce and we rebuild our infrastructure. That's why it's one of the most important issues we face. Thank you.
They made fun of Jimmy Carter because he wore a sweater when he made that announcement. And they made fun of Rachel Carson when she wrote Silent Spring. But finally, we have a president in the White House and Barack Obama who was able to go to Paris in December and actually lead the world on an agenda to try to address climate change. And the U.S. has to be the leader in this area for our own survival, but also for the planet's survival. This is an issue that got me into politics. I worked for a congressman in California where I was going to college who created or founded the first Earth Day, who voted for the Clean Water Act, the Clean Air Act. It was partially why I came to Washington, to be able to be part of this kind of conversation. And for the past 9 years, I've been working for Marriott International. That's what I did after my TV career. And it was not part of my job responsibility when I got there, but I made it part of my job responsibility to create a global environmental strategy for that company, working across all disciplines of the company, where we set goals to reduce our energy, water, and waste by 20%. And as I left the company in June to run for Congress, we met those goals. That's what we need to do in Congress. And that's why we also have to make sure that we have someone on the Supreme Court who will help us with climate action going forward.
Thank you.
So the reason that I've been endorsed in this campaign by the Maryland Sierra Club and by Bill McKibben, America's foremost environmentalist, and Attorney General Brian Frost, who's the lead environmentalist and the top Democrat in the state, is because they know that I have constantly and consistently taken on the special interests in Annapolis to fight for a green future right here in Maryland. And I said when I announced for Congress, I was not going to take any money from big gas, big coal, or big oil. Now, none of them want to give me any money anyway, to be clear. But I have challenged all of my fellow candidates here and across the country to join me in that. I think at the last debate, a couple said they would join me in saying they would not take any money from big gas, big coal, and big oil. I don't want to do it because the first bill that I'm going to introduce is to cut $10 billion from carbon subsidies out of the federal budget. And let's put that money in a green deal for America. Our infrastructure is ailing. Our roads, our highways, our metro systems, our transit systems. We need to invest in that, and we need to do it in an environmentally positive and sustainable way. That's what I'm going to fight for.
Thank you. I'm on board with the pledge, absolutely. And climate change is existential. It's also very personal. For me, it's very personal because when I was at the Department of Energy as a civil servant, I was running a solar energy program and creating a national program to convert brownfield sites to what we call bright fields, and essentially getting solar deployed in partnership with communities. And I was at the end of the Clinton administration when that happened. And then Bush, I can't say won, still can't say it. Bush took over, and Cheney became in charge of our energy policy. So I've seen it up close and personal. Now we have amazing innovation in this country. We can do this. We need to fight every day to ensure that the misrepresentation, the lies, and the anti-science attitudes in our Congress are rebutted at every possible moment. I will do that. I've done that professionally, and with your partnership and help, we will win this fight, because if we don't, our children are going to suffer deeply.
Thank you.
I'm certainly with the others. We are not only taking the money from big oil and big gas, we're not taking any money at all. That makes it really easy. But Carter absolutely had it right. We are at a crisis, and we have to be energy independent. But we've also got to start working here as Americans to be smart about how we use energy and be thoughtful about it. But on top of that, we have to work hard on the renewables. We got to get the water, we got to get the air, we got to get the solar, we got to get all those things. They've all got to move in the right direction. What we cannot have happen, is be held hostage to the foreign countries, Saudi Arabia, Iran, etc. We have to be energy independent.
At the end of the table.
Well, it's a no-brainer that climate change is an enormous problem, and we have to address it with the utmost seriousness. And so many of the Republicans are wrong about this one. Some of the issues we debate with the Republicans, they have good arguments. And this one they don't. They're just wrong. So it's a huge problem, and we have to address it with all deliberate speed. It is also, importantly, very much a global problem. There's some problems as Americans we can address here domestically. And though we can address this domestically too, the reality is it is essentially a global problem, and that's why I, fully support the Paris Agreement. But a problem that's equally important, and it is day to day, is the work-family balance problem and child development. This is a meat and potatoes issue. It is the centerpiece of my campaign. It deals with women in work. It deals with men in work. It deals with how we raise children. It is the first 5 years of a child's life. It is the huge gap in America's social policy. We do not have any real policies for the first 5 years. That problem is equally important.
I promise not to segue into a different issue. My record of accomplishment here is one. First of all, we all agree that global climate change is the #1 problem globally, but what have we done? 20% of the electricity in this room is renewable because I was able to convince a Republican governor named Bob Ehrlich to include it. I was able to include Republicans and convince them. That's the key to winning in these things. I passed the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Act of 2009, and this year we're going to pass the reenactment of that bill. I'm sponsoring it. 2016, and it's going to require that 40% of our electricity be renewable by 2030, and soon we're going to have offshore wind. And these are part of the reasons why one of my top supporters is a former executive director of the League of Conservation Voters. She understands, as we all have to understand, that taking a brave stance isn't good enough. You actually have to convince people who disagree with you to do these things, and nobody has a better track record in that than I do.
Okay, that's everybody, right? Okay. Thank you very much.
I'll go again.
No, it's okay. You're doing a pretty good job of sticking to the time. I really do appreciate it. I know it's not easy. But just to give you one of the really short ones that just 1 or 2 words, or you can replace it if you want with a different word, but let's keep it to that. Simply, it's progressive or moderate. And I will start with you. Come this way, go to the end. Just 1 or 2 words.
Ultra progressive.
That's a good way to have it.
1 or 2 words.
1 or 2, 3.
Young progressive.
Thoughtful and practical progressive.
Effective progressive. Lifetime.
Pragmatic and idealistic progressive.
Progressive, but driven also for jobs.
I am a realistic, center-left progressive.
Staunch but practical liberal.
I am a congressional reforming independent progressive.
Okay. Thank you. That was interesting. I was kind of waiting after a few for an all of the above or something. That got a little harder as we went on. Okay, well, this is a question about the economy. The economy has been making a gradual recovery since the Great Recession of 2008, as it's referred to. We've seen 72 consecutive months of private sector growth, stock market reaching record highs, increased productivity, 14.5 million new jobs. But we also see wage stagnation, growing income inequality, tens of millions of Americans are still living in poverty, and other concerns about things where things are not improving so fast. What's missing that can be done or supported by the federal government? Anna, Anna, did you start the last one? So we'll start with Will.
She started the short one. You want to go?
Yeah, no, that's all right. We got 9 viewers.
You get the last one. So that's a minute question?
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Okay. What's missing in the economy? Okay. You're right. People are frustrated. I think you're seeing Donald Trump and Cruz and the crazies tap into frustration. Okay. We have had, I'm proud to have been a part of the Obama administration where we've had all this private sector job growth and the unemployment rate is 4.9%, as you mentioned, and all the great things, and more people seeking jobs last month than the month before. We came out of losing 800,000 jobs a month. So what do we need to do now to really spark the economy? Okay, we need to raise the minimum wage, obviously. That needs to be a floor. That's a huge thing. I don't think you have disagreement up here on that. We need to make sure that we're investing in our education system the right way, and that means so people are ready for middle skilled jobs. So that means we need to make sure that childcare is affordable. It's an issue that's crippling families. I have 5 kids under 3. Trust me, I know. $2,000, $1,600, $2,000 a month for childcare. We also need to reduce the cost of college, because if you're going to have these jobs that are in the 21st century economy, people have to have higher skill levels. When I was in the Senate Education Committee, we reduced student interest rates from 8 to 6 and raised Pell Grants to their highest levels ever, but we need to do more. I have to stop there. Sorry.
Sorry. I'm sorry we don't have more time for everybody and every question, but you guys are doing a great job.
So let's give President Obama credit for bringing unemployment down from 10 to 5%, which is pretty amazing. Unfortunately, under 5, yeah. Unfortunately, what's happened is in that same period of time, wages have been stagnant and new job creation hasn't been what it should be. And this is really why this economy is not working for all people and why we have growing income inequality. And I do believe you start raising wages by raising the minimum wage, because that lifts all boats. You also have to look at equal pay for equal work so that everybody brings home their true value. You've got to make it easier for families to stay in the workforce by having paid family and medical leave. You've got to invest in education, and I'm supportive of universal pre-K because that starts to lift all children at the beginning, and investing in our community colleges going forward and connecting those community colleges with jobs in the area. I look at Frederick County, and there's wonderful growth up here, but there could be so much more. Clean jobs if we have a carbon tax and invest that in renewable energy jobs. More medical, biomedical, as we take what happens at NIH and bring real jobs to the area. And that's going to make a difference for the next generation.
Thank you.
This gives me an opportunity to recognize my wife, Sarah Bloom Raskin, the Deputy Secretary of the Treasury, and the highest ranking woman in the history of the Treasury Department. Maybe she left us, I don't know. So maybe well, look, what's missing, you ask, rightfully, because look, what's happened over the last several decades now, you can extend longer, is that the income and wealth growth is up, but wages are stagnant. Wages and benefits are stagnant. So what's missing? 2 things. One, unions. Unions have taken a terrible hit because of union busting and collaborative policies by the NLRB and right-wing politicians in Washington. And I've got a 5-point plan that I wrote myself on my website to end captive audience speeches in the workplace, to revitalize the right to organize, to re-energize collective bargaining, to make sure that workers and unions are not being hit in bankruptcy and so on. But small business, let me give you an example of what I did in Annapolis, okay? When I got there, Big Liquor had taken the position that everybody's got to go to a liquor store to buy wine. And I said, I don't accept that. I'm going to put in a provision for direct wine shipment, which 46 states have. It's just me and a couple of conservative Republicans who did it. We doubled our support year after year. If you don't remember anything else about me, remember I'm the guy who brought you direct wine shipment in the state of Texas. For our wineries.
too many people are working too hard for too little. We need an economy that shifts. We need an economy that's working for everybody, not just for the wealthiest and the CEOs. I got to tell you, I went to business school and public policy school, and I've seen in the last 20 years the acceleration in the disparities. It's breathtaking. And what that means is we're leaving too many behind. Our training programs are not adequate to help people get reinvested and bought into the next economy. My mother is a retired college professor. She taught English skills and writing skills to people who were transitioning in their careers, looking to get into that economy. For example, the trade deal that we have with Trans-Pacific Partnership, which I do not support in its current form, we need to ensure that before any trade deal goes forward, that there is money available to ensure that the people hurt by that deal get the training they need to leapfrog into the 21st century economy. We're not doing that. We're not taking advantage of that. There is a ton of waste in the defense budget and other areas of the federal budget that I will attack on day one to ensure that we find that money and help our people.
Thank you.
I'm not sure what the big liquor's all about. That's not me. I support 100% free shipping of wine. We support it all across the country, but whatever. End of the day, education is the key. It starts with listening. We need to listen to the people and see what they're saying and take heed versus all the rhetoric that we have in Congress. Certainly education starts with universal pre-K. From there, why not vocational schools? Number of states have put vocational schools in at no charge whatsoever. It's all about getting young people prepared for a job. A job is what counts. College. What's wrong with 4 years college free, but you have to do 5 years public service? There certainly ought to be a give and a give back. 1.1 trillion. That's the student debt right now. It's out of control. It's more than doubled. We need to help these young people out so they don't leave college with crippling debt.
This is a great question, and it really brings into focus the challenge. Because the real question is, if you're a realistic progressive, what can you propose that could realistically get done? Well, it clearly can't be just all more government programs, because the Republicans are not going to agree to it. They have control of the House now, and they'll continue to have control. Any approach has to be collaborative between government, business, and families. Now, my family policy would be paid for in a way that would draw on all those sides. But going on to another issue, with the 20-somethings, right? We need to have a jobs program for them. Well, where would we get such a program? Well, the most realistic way to do it is to offer tax credits to businesses, to hire young people or to hire minorities. So you can't just propose a new $50 billion program. It's not going to get passed. Got to work with business to help young people. Got to work with business to help families. Got to be collaborative. That's the only realistic way to go.
The most shocking number of our time is the fact that in our economy there are 4 million unfilled jobs. Think about that. 4 million jobs going unfilled because we don't have Americans who are trained to fill them. And the vast majority of these jobs are non-outsourceable. They're things like being a respiratory technician, a lineman. Lineman jobs, by the way, pay $100,000 a year. These are important jobs that we need to start to train Americans to do. The second thing that we have to do is we have to use technology to create the industries and the opportunities of the future. And that's what I've done in Annapolis. I was the father of something called the Technology Development Corporation. And every year, David Trone's created 5,000 jobs, and that's great. But almost every year, that organization takes scientists, gets them mentorship and financing, and last year produced 5,000 jobs averaging $70,000 a year. And this has been going on for the better part of a decade. That's what we have to do nationally.
When you look on my website at the stories by NPR and The Atlantic and Politico, you'll be surprised to see the effectiveness of this reform that we can enact in Congress. In Nebraska, which is the one state where this has been in effect, last year, the red Nebraska legislature not only canceled the death penalty, not only did they give dreamers driver's licenses and increase taxes on gas, they increased the minimum wage. When you ask these Republican members of the legislature, why did you do these things that were anathema to your own party? They said, well, there were no party bosses here, we don't have them, telling me what to do, and I had to think it through. And I realized that the evidence was on the side of voting as I did, even though it's usually a Democratic way to vote, but I could explain it to my conservative constituents and not get thrown out. So this reform is one that is very good for the Democratic agenda. Go on my site and read about James Couzens and how the Ford Motor Company doubled workers' wages in 1914, and that created the middle class, and how Nick Hanauer today is the reincarnation of James Couzens. Thank you.
Thank you. What's missing? I think we have to focus on the opportunity agenda. What's the opportunity agenda? To me, it is those programs, such as education, that are basic for ensuring that every individual, every human being can maximize their potential. I was served on the school board in Montgomery County, and I served because I believe that public education is the beginning of that opportunity agenda. But it doesn't end there. As people go forward, we need to see that we cannot keep this huge inequity, 99% versus 1%. We have to focus on those hardworking families, those individuals that are living on minimum wage. And you know who are the ones that are most in poverty? Are women working tip wages. We did not address tip wages in Maryland. We owe that to come back, because women are many times the head of a household with children, and they are living in poverty. That is not acceptable in the America that I want to defend.
Thank you, and thank you all. We're going to do two of the quick questions, and then another longer 1 minute question. And this one is just yes, no, maybe. Trans-Pacific Partnership, or TPP trade agreement. Yes, no, maybe.
No.
Starting with, oh no, just with, Will, did you start the last one? So Kathleen, you'd be first.
That one doesn't work. It wouldn't be very good. I think that this TPP has some problems from what I've seen. There's some environmental groups that are deeply concerned about it, some that are not. But I do know that 95% of the consumers are outside the U.S., so we have to look for ways that we have trade with the rest of the world and also at the same time protect the environment and our workers.
I'll take that as a maybe.
Could you hold people to yes, no, or maybe?
I'll try. Let's just keep these very short. But that was about 3 long sentences. But let's try to do it as even shorter if we can, because we've got a few questions like this and we can get through them.
Who's next?
Who's going this way?
Okay.
No, not in its current form.
Okay.
Well, I already said no, but I'm a committed internationalist, and we do need to make it work for everyone.
Thank you.
Easy one. Yes, yes, yes.
Yes, I support it. It's up on my website. We can't retreat from the global economy.
No, I oppose it. We need to fill those 4 million jobs first in America.
The agreement allows corporations to sue governments. It doesn't allow trade unions to sue governments. No.
Absolutely no. I've seen what Kafka has done to Central America. It has destroyed our environment. It's destroyed our labor unions. Absolutely not. We need to have fair and just trade agreements.
No, I work for Sherrod Brown, a champion on labor and environmental standards and trade agreements, so no on this TPP.
Okay, another short one, and just really work on keeping it really short. Marijuana. Medical use, decriminalization, legalization.
I introduced medical marijuana in Maryland. We got it passed. I introduced marijuana decriminalization, and we should go all the way and put the drug dealers out of business and regulate, tax, and make marijuana safe for our people.
I hate this question because I agree, but I also know it's dangerous, and I'm worried about my daughters, so I agree with decriminalization and medical use and everything that Jamie said.
Certainly medical use, certainly decriminalization, but let's wait for the facts to come in on the folks who have been doing it for 30, 40 years.
I support the legalization of medical marijuana and the decriminalization of marijuana.
I support the legalization of marijuana, tax regulated, because prohibition is a really stupid strategy.
I'm the only candidate who 10 years ago purchased marijuana illegally for his dying wife, and I'll tell you, there's a place for it.
Yes, I support the decriminalization of marijuana and the medical use of marijuana. We have struggled at the state level to finally get to where we are. It is an issue that is so important and can affect so many people that need it.
We have more people in jail for nonviolent drug offenses than any place in the world. Yes on medical, yes on decrim, but it has to be real decrim, so the amounts aren't so low that you can't actually still get caught and go to jail and get a fine, because fines are ways to discriminate too. And yes on legalization with heavy regulation. We got to be worried about edibles and these things that are happening out in Colorado.
Okay, thank you.
To look at that.
Yes on decriminalization, yes on medical marijuana, and I'm leaning heavily in on legalization as we look at what happens in Colorado. We have to learn from that experience.
Okay, thank you all. 1 minute for this one. Also to put foreign policy into a minute, but this is just to get people started. And again, hopefully people will go to your websites and other sources of information to find out more. But from the Middle East to North Korea. You're going to hear from North Carolina. From the Middle East to North Korea and beyond, instability, wars, terrorism, and other threats abound. Without the time to get into the details of these and other many problems, what can you tell us about your overall approach to the role of the United States in the world? So, we've got too many different issues, but generally, how do you approach it?
Who started?
Jamie started the last one, right? So you're up.
I've spent a whole career working on foreign policy and international affairs, most recently as a senior official handling the House of Representatives for the State Department for Secretary Kerry. And I was an activist for peace, helping to create an organization called J Street to promote Middle East peace, as well as leading an activist campaign to create political support for diplomacy with Iran. And I did that because I truly believe that our security is best served by ensuring that we use all of our tools to resolve conflicts, and that means diplomatic tools. I don't want to see body bags coming back to the United States again for a war of choice that no one should fight. And I believe deeply that we have the capacity and the assets to do it. I'm also ready on day one to do the oversight we need to of the defense budget. I mentioned it a moment ago. 1/3 of our spending is discretionary. 60% of that is tied up in national security. We're wasting $1.4 trillion, it's estimated, on F-35 fighter that will not defeat the terrorists, is looking backwards and not helping our troops in the field with the body armor and other tools they need. And I will fight to ensure that we get that right.
Thank you.
It's certainly very hard to achieve peace through military action. But that said, we have to strongly support Israel categorically. At the same time, we have to realize that what's happening with the immigration and the outflow from Iraq, the whole disaster that's there, we can't just sit by on the sidelines and not begin to address it. We need to look at no-fly zones. We need to support some of our friendly folks in those areas, the Kurds in particular. But we can't just sit here and wait for everything to happen, because Europe is being flooded with millions of immigrants, and it's not going to end well. It's going to end very badly, unfortunately.
I had a book published recently called Leveraging, a Political, Economic, and Societal Framework, and that gives a lot of my views about foreign policy and international relations. In a word, we have to be more active and more engaged. And the TPP is one example. This is an example of where our economic policy is intertwined with all of our foreign policy. We cannot be retreating from Asia. We have to be engaged. We have to be, forming that trade arrangement. With the Iran nuclear deal, I think we needed to be more active, stronger. I'm the only candidate who was opposed to the Iran nuclear deal. I think that we hesitated there, and we thought that we had to make an agreement, otherwise there would be war. That was a false dichotomy. There were 200 times in our history that we've rejected a deal, and then Congress has amended it or fixed it. So overall, we have to be doing more.
Tell me, can I start? Okay. First of all, I don't believe in wars of choice, especially in the Middle East. I do very strongly support President Obama's pivot to Asia, because if you think about it, if you draw a triangle which has at its points India, Australia, and Japan, 2/3 of the world economy is going to be in there, and the role of American leadership, generally speaking, in my opinion, is that not of a bully and not of a world police officer, but instead as the coordinator for the world's democracies and the world's economy. My philosophy is a very traditional American philosophy that we had after the Second World War. We need to go back to that philosophy of a nation, a great nation, perhaps the greatest nation in human history, that leads through example and coalition building, not through bluster, saber rattling, and warfare.
I have to give a shout out to my 102-year-old father, who could not be here today. He is one of the world's leading experts in the Palestinian-Israeli conflict. During the Jimmy Carter administration, he was the unofficial go-between between Yasser Arafat and the State Department. And from him, I've had an education. I traveled to Israel for 10 days with him, traveled all around the country and in the West Bank. And when we look at the situation there, I think it's a model of what we should do worldwide, which was your question, what would you do worldwide? It's very easy to have despair about the Palestinian-Israeli situation, but what's not known is that there are literally scores of organizations involving thousands of Palestinians and Israelis building partnerships in the arts, in music, in business, in science, developing trust, developing experience working together. The U.S. State Department supports one particular MEET, and on my website, you click on Israel, you can read more good news.
To me, this is personal. I consider myself a citizen of the world. I was born in El Salvador and came to live here in the United States, but have had the opportunity to live and work in Europe, in Geneva, where I studied, and also have worked and lived in Venezuela, Peru, and Bolivia. I believe that these experiences help to form a much greater understanding of who we are on the planet. We appreciate each other's culture, language, and history. I believe that that is the way that the United States needs to look at the rest of the world. I also have been working for the past 10 years with a group of women, Will Wan, where we are seeking peace and security and focusing on the role of women at the peace table. We believe that it is only going to be through non-military, non-war solutions that we are going to find world peace. Fine, thank you. Oh, I'm so sorry.
2 questions ago, I said I had 5 kids under 3. I do love my wife, but I don't have that many. It's 3 under 5. Sorry about that.
In fairness, we can start the 1 minute.
Okay. I was raised Catholic too. So overall approach. As I mentioned, my dad's from Nigeria. Have a global view here. My mom's from Kansas. Actually, has used Ancestry.com to trace her roots back to present-day Czech Republic, the Austrian Empire. So here's what we need to do. No policing the world, right? When we came in the White House in 2009, so much damage had been done by the Bush administration of our reputation internationally. There's a reason that when the president went to Germany, people were throwing themselves at his feet, and he had crowds of hundreds of thousands, because he's done, I think, a great job in trying to improve that reputation. Not everything's perfect, but I think we've made some strides. So we do that when we do things like the Iran deal. I think it's a great example of the 80-20 in politics. You didn't get everything you want, but we have snapback, we have other provisions where you've already seen our service members return because of that deal, and other things are happening. We also need to have a commitment if we do go in and we degrade and need to defeat ISIS, and we've done that through airstrikes, 25-30% so far. If we do go in, and we have to do it in a coalition, and we have to have a commitment with that coalition to rebuild. You can't go in and leave, because when you leave people with no jobs and no education, that's what foments terrorism. So we have to have that commitment. That's why it's a serious decision to go in anywhere. Thank you.
I think the U.S. has always had a really important role in ensuring peace and security in the world, but not, as others have said, as the world's policeman. And I have a deep suspicion of military involvement. I started in college protesting against the Vietnam War. I was against the Iraq War from the very beginning. And I think that putting troops on the ground in a place like Syria is not going to end successfully. That said, I think we have to be engaged in the world, and I think an important way to do that is through global economic engagement. It's why I kind of lean in on trade, because I've seen in my business career where I worked for a company that does business in 80 countries around the world, and I had a chance to travel to at least 50 of them over the past 9 years. I've seen how important it is when U.S. companies and U.S. government invest in the economies of other countries. I had a chance to lead an effort to build a hotel in Haiti, a place that's been fraught with political problems, but also earthquakes and other disasters. We built a hotel and created 200 jobs, and that helps make that country more stable. I've seen projects like that in Africa. That's the kind of engagement we need to have, soft diplomacy.
The values that I would bring to foreign policy are the same values that I bring to domestic policy. A passionate belief in democracy, in human rights, the rule of law, equal rights and opportunity for all citizens. When I was in college, and I'm a contemporary of President Obama's, we were fighting to get the universities and the corporations to divest from apartheid South Africa. And I got arrested at the South African embassy with a lot of my friends when we were in school, and I wear that arrest as a badge of pride that I was engaged in a movement to help isolate apartheid and to change a regime abroad that was oppressing its own people. That's the mentality that I would bring. When the Iraq War came and George W. Bush and his administration lied to America, I marched against the Iraq War before it happened. And I took my kids down there. I'll never forget. My son Tommy said, "They're not taking our pictures here or anything, are they?" I said, "No, this is America. That can't happen." Of course, it came out later. They were taking everybody's pictures, you know. This is a scary time because of what's happening around the world, and we need to champion American constitutional values through every mode of diplomacy we've got, and use war only as a matter of last resort to fight terrorist death cults like the Islamic State when there's no other way to deal with it.
Okay, you started that one, right, Joe? Yeah. So, okay. All right, this one, we're not even going to go down this, so just raise your hand. Just a quick and easy one. Are you planning to have, if you win, a fully staffed or full-time staffed field office or other field office in Frederick County? Anybody? We just want to get that on the record because we all want that. Okay, so everybody here will hold whoever wins. We'll hold whoever wins. Okay. Right. Go ahead.
My guest constituents program takes care of it.
Okay. Another quick one. Not an easy one, but a quick one, I think, here. So rather than take a bunch of time with it, do you support or oppose capital punishment? Raise your hand if you're opposed to capital punishment. Is there anybody who's not? Okay.
Wait a moment, is it opposed or?
Opposed. You're opposed? Raise your hand. Okay. I just thought it didn't seem like it was worth going down the whole thing because I thought we might be unanimous there. Okay. For a minute here, when you hear Black Lives Matter, what does it mean to you about what is happening and what should happen? And we start with you this time.
This is a very important area to myself. My wife and I have worked with the American Civil Liberties Union for over 20 years. And we recently worked with them last fall, and we founded a Center for Criminal Justice with the ACLU. And it's really focused on prison reform, but prison reform is focused on people of color in large respects. And so we're working with the ACLU right now to what can happen to, first of all, get less people going into prison. Then when they're in prison, how they achieve training, achieve education, so they're ready for re-entry. Because we have to cut back our recidivism rates, and that's what's affecting the black community and the Hispanic community. America has 5% of the people in the world, but 25% of the world's prisoners. And that's just not right. We have to attack this and fix it.
Well, my mother taught racial relations in the 1960s, so I grew up kind of learning about black-white relations and was fully kind of immersed in all the great concepts of racial equality. I taught Martin Luther King his pilgrimage to nonviolence 35 times at George Washington University when I used to be an academic. But I want to tell you the truth. I'm kind of 80-20 on this issue. Obviously, there's immense racism towards African Americans, but it's not 1860, and we're not in South Carolina, and I've lived in South Carolina, and it's not 1955 in Alabama. So I have read and studied and talked to many people on the more conservative side of these issues, and I do believe that I'm giving you 80-20. About 20% of the issues in the African American community must ultimately come from within the African American community. There's soul searching that needs to be done. And this is not just about criminal justice.
Thank you.
So yes, it's racism, but there is a role of moral responsibility for the African American community also. Thank you.
I suppose I have to disagree a little bit with you, David. It's true that this is not 1955, but the danger is that we are regressing back to 1955. The oppression of people of color by policing agencies is a shocking development. It's something that we cannot stand for if we are to be a civilized nation. And I think that one of the things, of course, criminal justice reform is very important, and I think all of us who serve in the legislature have been leaders on that and have voted the correct way. But one thing that we have to understand is that we have to learn from other nations where police agencies are trained to de-escalate violent occurrences. You know, reaching for your gun should not be the first option. A good friend of mine in the legislature, who is a retired police officer, has said that we need to change the culture of policing in America, and through that, hopefully, reform the culture of our society generally.
As a resident of Bethesda, I have to confess ignorance about much detail of the Frederick County Police Department, but I will say that the Montgomery County Police Department is a nationally recognized model for training and de-escalation. And that's why we haven't had any incidents in a very diverse county, any significant number of incidents anyway. After my first wife passed away, I married an African-American woman, Harriet Sandford, who is the head of the NEA Foundation, the part of the organization that did not endorse my friend Jamie here. And it has been an education, and I will say after 6 years of marriage, my wife will tell you, as she tells me, you still don't get it about being black in America. But mass incarceration is a huge problem, and we need to not double or triple, we need to increase by a factor of 10 to 100 our efforts to get these people who have been, these young black men who have been imprisoned for minor offenses out of the penal system, and we must get rid of for-profit prisons.
Thank you.
The question was the Black Lives Matters movement. I think this is a very important movement now, today, because I think we have gotten used to ignoring the discrimination and the disparities that exist in our society. And unless you're a person of color, a Latino or an African American, you might think that there are no problems. Well, there are problems every single day. And I think that this movement is making us look at who we are and how we are dealing with everyone in a just and fair way. And we're not. We're failing. I think we see failure clearly demonstrated in the disproportionate representation of people of color in our prisons. I think we're seeing it in the gaps in achievement in our schools. We are seeing it in the difference in wages and opportunities in jobs. So this movement is an important wake-up call, I think, for our nation, and it's important that we begin to take it seriously. Thank you.
Thank you.
I want to commend you for asking the question. We've had 15 debates. First person, I think, to ask about that movement. I knocked on doors before I came here today. One of the people I knocked on said, you know, Democrat, it's tough being sometimes a Democrat in Thurmont. We had a KKK rally a few years ago. And so this part of I think, the state and the country, it's a good question to have. I think it's speaking to the fact that we need a revolution. We need a revolution in education, where we're now more segregated in our school system than we were in the 60s and 70s, by poverty, by race and ethnicity. That's definitely true in Montgomery County as well. We now have more people in jail. There's a New York Times report, 1.5 million black men are missing from society because of jail or death, gun violence. You have cities where there's 2 women to every 1 black man in inner cities, so we have a huge problem that affects the family and people's ability. I've been racially profiled in the criminal justice system. I've been arrested. I've written about that. Charges were threw out. Thank God I'm a lawyer and have had opportunity. But it's a wake-up call to us now to actually move forward on unemployment, on education, on criminal justice system, which are all legacies of our history. And we need to have a truth and reconciliation moment. I think this is our new civil rights moment.
I would agree with that. I think Black Lives Matter is in the long tradition of Frederick Douglass, of Martin Luther King, and today Barack Obama, who raises these issues. And we need to sound the alarm bell, and that's what they've done, on issues of higher rates of unemployment, higher rates of incarceration, the education inequality, which is why I believe so firmly in universal pre-K for that good first start, because here in Frederick County, in Montgomery County, in Carroll County, you see tremendous performance gaps, achievement gaps between white and black students. We need the resources to be able to go into our schools and address those, because it all starts with that foundation, schools. We need that equality there so that we can have equality in the workforce and equality in opportunity going forward. So I salute Black Lives Matter, and I think it would be a priority, and I believe it would be a priority for most of us here on that stage. But it has to be a shared priority, and that's how we're going to move it forward. I would like to see Black Lives Matter grow beyond what it's currently defined as, that it becomes all of our movement.
Thank you.
I think that everybody in this room understands the profound racism that the Black Lives Matter movement has brought attention to over the last year or two. What we need is real policy results and solutions, and not just rhetoric about the problem. So in my time in the state Senate, I led the fight to abolish the death penalty. We abolished the death penalty. With Senator Michael Huff from Frederick County, we introduced the Second Chance Act. This was bipartisan legislation which said if you have a nonviolent misdemeanor conviction, you've been clean for 3 years, you can wipe it off of your record, get it shielded from public view in order to get back on your feet and get in the job market. That affects more than 275,000 Marylanders to allow people to get back on their feet and participating in the economy. We reformed mandatory minimum drug sentences, which was incredibly unjust. Lots of judges would say, I don't want to sentence you to 10 years in jail for what you did, but the law has made it that way. We reformed that. And we're also working on incredible problems of economic inequity and predatory financial activity across the state that have profound racial disparities in terms of the effect on people. So we're making that happen this session in Annapolis.
Isn't it incredible that we're having a real deep discussion about this, although brief, while Republicans are playing footsie with the KKK? My wife is Sri Lankan American, brown skin. Her mother, when she delivered her, was forcibly sterilized by a doctor who the words before he put her under were, no more brown babies for you, no more colored babies for you. This is personal. And I think it's horrible that people in this country have to scream to be heard to say that their lives matter. We're all equal. These are Americans. And so we have to change the national conversation. My daughters asked me today, Daddy, what about being brown skinned? Is it getting better or is it getting worse? That's a horrible thing to think about. So there is a major cultural fight underway. I applaud all of us here for being willing to stand up and fight for this. And we have to denounce at every possible moment when our politicians, I won't call them leaders, when the politicians scream on the other side.
Thank you. Back to quick. I won't say quick and easy, just but quick. The 1933 Glass-Steagall Act, nice quick one, right, was repealed in 1999. Do you support reestablishing it or not? Yes or no, as much as you can. Just stick to something really short. I think we're down at the end again.
We start with that. Yes, I support reinstating it. In my recent book,
We're going to keep it even quicker. Okay.
Yes, I do support reinstating its provisions.
Wait, let me say, does anybody, were you all in favor of restating Glass-Steagall?
Yes.
I want to strengthen it.
Okay, then go ahead and say it. That's short.
Yes, I support it, but I want to strengthen it. I think it hasn't worked. We still have a lot of work to do.
Okay, thank you. They're moving around. Musical microphones.
Yes, it's devastated the economy, housing, and African American community, other communities following on the last question, so yes.
Thank you.
We have Dodd-Frank. I know Chris Dodd, I know Barney Frank. They both have briefed me on this. They are both incredible progressives. They believe that Dodd-Frank is the right way to go, and I would support reinforcing that as opposed to Glass-Steagall.
Thank you.
We need to enforce Dodd-Frank, especially its provisions on executive compensation, which are ridiculous, but I absolutely support reinstating Glass-Steagall. It was a tragedy that everyone done that.
Okay, good, thank you.
The acceleration of income disparity in this country is clear. The proof is in the pudding. We need to fix it. That doesn't mean identical word for word, but we have to go in that direction.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, and also a quick one. I know this is also
What act were you talking about?
the Glass-Steagall Act.
Never heard.
Well, I'm not going to take the time right now, but it's Steagall with the ST, and I would encourage you to take a look. It relates to the role of the banks and two different types of banks and financial institutions.
Look at the big
Okay,
short.
yes, no, or maybe. Qualify it with a sentence at the most. Fracking. Kumar.
Very much opposed.
You know, the only renewable source that in the long run makes sense is solar. There's enough.
Okay.
We need to do
That's good.
there.
That's good. I'm getting better at enforcing this. It's hard, though. You guys have been really good self-policing.
Absolutely opposed to fracking. Voted against it.
Opposed, we need to invest in renewables.
Opposed until we could make it safe for people's health and their neighborhoods, and in the meantime, full investment in renewables as the alternative.
I'm opposed because I prefer my water non-flammable.
One more sentence, that's it.
Well, I just say I introduced legislation to ban fracking in the state of Maryland.
There you go.
Yeah, fracking is redundant and unnecessary. We have other sources.
Yeah, clearly not necessary. We got to get all over renewables, no question.
Okay, didn't you start that one? Oh, you didn't. Kumar did, I'm sorry.
I oppose fracking as it's done now, but I leave open the possibility that science could discover a way to do it more safely.
Given the time, I'm going to cut out one of the other two questions so you'll have a chance to we're going to do a 1-minute wrap up at the end. So just got a couple more to go through really quickly, and then we'll do the one last question and then the close. But this one is, raise your hand. We'll see if that'll work this time, and if it doesn't, you support a path to citizenship. Everybody, see, that saved us a little time. Saved us a little time. This one maybe isn't everybody going to raise their hand, but I'm going to ask you to be quick and easy or short. So, Dan, you start with single-payer health care. Yes, no, maybe?
The Institute of Medicine says we waste $700 billion a year The most important thing is that we ask the whole healthcare community repeatedly, why are we spending 2 to 3 times as much as anybody else?
Let's keep it, just try to get a sentence or at most.
Yes, so let's have universal health care like the rest of the world has. Cuba has universal health care.
Yes, was proud to work on the passage of Obamacare. While I was in the White House, we wanted the public option, didn't get it, but we need to go back, build a coalition, and single payer is the way to go.
I believe we make the Affordable Care Act better and better. We get more people into the system. Single payer is not going to pass in the near future, but ultimately I think we will move in the direction of a Medicare for all.
Let's build on the great successes we've had under the ACA by passing single payer and getting a system. Let's make it a prior condition that we take 32 cents on the dollar and give it to insurance companies.
Healthcare is not yet working for everyone, and we need to expand Medicare, and we need to make sure that the insurance companies feel that pressure.
Yeah, clearly, the Affordable Care Act has been spectacular. Everybody deserves health care. We put another 15, 16 million people now have health care, and we got to build on Medicare also.
In an ideal world, I support single-payer health insurance. We don't live in an ideal world. There is no conceivable way in the next 10 years we could pass it. We have to keep ACA and make sure the Republicans don't repeal it and improve on that. This is not an ideal world, so I'm the realistic progressive here.
Well, we have to have goals, though, don't we?
As long as they can be expressed.
And I believe single payer is the goal we should shoot for eventually.
Thank you. All right, looking at the clock, you guys have done a great job. For the most part, I know how hard it is, especially with big issues and limited time. I think rather than ask a whole other question and then have the closings, I'm just going to tell you what the question would have been. Encourage you to start your closing with it. We'll give you a minute and a half instead of a minute.
You're not allowing any time for audience questions?
Yes, that's why I'm wrapping it up quick. And people, they're going to be able to linger stuff too, but they're going to close. Now we're skipping a question too. They've all been promised they'd have a chance to close. We're just making it a minute and a half. The question, if you can build it into your close, that's up to you or not, is members of Congress are often associated with certain issues that reflect their passion or their district. From committee assignments to general leadership on an issue, what are you most passionate about, and what would you like to see accomplished in that area? And if you can blend that into your close, we'll give you a minute and a half each, and then we'll take as much time as you guys can stay for questions after that. But we're starting with you, Anna.
Thank you. So there are no questions from the audience before our closing then?
Not before closing, after the closing.
So now? My passion, and there's a lot of it, has been around education. That's why I ran for the school board. I saw that as the bombs were falling on Central America, many children, many families were coming to live here, particularly in Montgomery County. And what I saw was that the schools that had formed me, I went to public education, got a great education, permitted me to be a chemist, an engineer, to be able to raise 3 sons by myself. I was a single mom. And I had the professional experience to be able to keep a quality of life that I think is what we are all seeking. That passion I have carried forth because I went to the State House and have focused on ensuring that education equity continues being the primary reason of our funding for education, to make sure that every child is going to have an opportunity. At the federal level, the strongest program that serves poor children is Title I. We have not been focusing on ensuring that educational opportunities are available for everyone. We now have the wonderful proposal that I support of free community colleges. That is the direction that we need to move in. I will continue fighting for that. And the obvious one is immigration. We absolutely need immigration reform, and that is another passionate issue that I will continue to fight for. Thank you. Is this the closing?
Well, it's a minute and a half altogether.
Okay.
For Phil, so you just used up that time.
Just as I say bye-bye, My name is easy to remember. It goes from A to Z. Anna Sorrentino.
Thank you. I'm most passionate about giving opportunity to everybody, no matter what you look like, where you live, and who you are. And that's really what America's about. And that's what I've dedicated my life to. I share with you my story of my friend who lost his life, and how in the 20 plus years since I've been trying to correct the systems that created those lack of opportunities for him. And with me, I think what we need in Congress now are people that have new voices and fresh perspectives. There's a reason it has a 14% approval rating. I've worked there in the majority and in the minority. When you talk about child care, you heard earlier, I have 3 kids under 5. We've got that right. We pay it every month. When you talk about student loan debt, the Washington Post talked about our financials last week. The first sentence was, you have one law professor who makes over $250,000 and another person who has $160,000 in law school debt. You can guess who I was. Let's put someone in Congress who's dealing with the problems Americans are facing. That's the perspective that's not represented. When you talk about elder care and health care, my dad lost his job, unfortunately, a couple years ago. He came down with cancer. We had to move him in. Thank God for Obamacare. We signed him up for Medicaid, and then he turned 65, and now he has Medicare. We need to strengthen those programs. I think the perspective in Congress is someone who knows what working people are going through, but also knows how to move legislation. I worked with Republicans to raise Pell Grants and to expand Head Start for early childhood education. I made sure the FDA regulated tobacco products that were harming and influencing our kids to smoke tobacco. I know how the government works on day one, having worked in the House, the Senate, the White House, and the Department of Education. Send someone who has that life experience, but also the political experience to get things done. Thank you.
Before you start the clock, let me just say, Kai, you did a great job keeping this lively and keeping this moving. Really nice job. So when I did start, and now you can start the clock, I told you that in many ways I got into this race because I believe too few women will get off the sidelines and run for office. And that was really an animating factor for me. But really, I got in this race because of you. I got to know you through those 25 years of telling your stories up here in Frederick County on the news every night. I got to love this area and the people of this area. I was so lucky to be able to raise my 3 kids in Montgomery County here in this area with all the advantages that we have. But I also know that there are a lot of problems, a lot of things we need to solve going forward if we want a bright future. And so that's really why I'm running for Congress. And the issues I really care about are people having good jobs, knowing that our kids are going to have a better life than we did. That's what we all want for our kids. It's why I would love to be on energy and workforce, because, education and workforce as a committee on the Hill, because it starts with school and investing in our schools, whether it's English as a second language or kids with disabilities or resources for teachers. And then it ends with getting a job and making sure the jobs are connected to the community colleges and the vocational schools in the area, making those things work. I also worked in business, and in business, you get things done. You gotta move things forward. Stalemate, gridlock is not an option. Otherwise, as you know, you go out of business. And for me, it was solving problems, creating teams. I was a progressive voice in a pretty conservative but good company. And I helped a good company become great. A good company become more environmentally friendly, more diverse, more open to the LGBT community. And that's what I'd like to do in Congress, to open up this world to more opportunity, to your children and the future of this country.
Thank you.
Again, thanks to all of you for coming. But on the first day of my campaign, I was endorsed by Congressman John Conyers, who's the senior-most member of Congress, co-founder of the Congressional Black Caucus, and the only person in our history ever endorsed by Martin Luther King in an election. And he endorsed me, so by the transfer properties. But one of the things that Congressman Conyers said was, we need Jamie on the Judiciary Committee to be fighting for civil rights, for civil liberties, and for civil justice, all the things that he's fought for in Maryland with such great effect. So I am very proud of the record that I present to the people of Maryland in terms of leading the fight to abolish the death penalty and pass the Second Chance Act and enact medical marijuana. This is a period, the last decade, perhaps of the most fertile legislative breakthroughs in the entire history of the state of Maryland. I want to invite everybody here to come to one of my campaign events so we can have a real conversation. It's obviously a little stifling to do the 60-second answers. We just had our 107th event in our campaign. We have more individual donors than any congressional campaign in America right now because of the grassroots character of the campaign that we've been running. So please Today, if you would, give me your card, or I'll give you my card. We'll put you on our list, and I make you this pledge. You will never be lonely again. Thank you.
I'm passionate about making positive change. When I joined the Peace Corps, I did it because I believed in a Jewish value called tikkun olam, which means healing the world. The idea behind that is that we all have a role to play. We're all equal. We're on this planet for a finite amount of time, and we can make a positive impact. And I've tried to do that in my nearly 20 years of service at the federal level. I have fought hard fights. I helped to build a coalition to fight against going to another war of choice in the Middle East, taking on the orthodoxy, frankly, of the pro-Israel community, taking on the orthodoxy of many in the Democratic Party. And we changed the politics about that. For that, I was asked to go into the State Department to help win the fight in a Republican Congress and to help ensure that we could keep going forward. And in addition to that, I think really this is about all of us. At the end of the day, what kind of community do we want to have? Where do we want to put our dollars? Where do we want to invest? What I'm asking is for your vote so that someone like me, someone who has been a civil servant, been in the federal government for a dozen and a half years, my wife as well, we get it. We have 3 small children. We understand what it means to raise a family, to be in tough, difficult times politically, to watch it, to feel the racism, and to fight back and to make change. And that's what I promise to do, because at the end of the day, it's about ensuring that we have a better world for ourselves and that we do heal this world for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you. It really starts with great constituent services like Chris Van Hollen has had for years. We already have an office in Walkersville. That's where we have to start. After that, do we need a different type of person in Washington? Gridlock, 14% approval rating. Is just electing the same type people year after year really going to get anything done? And that's our suggestion. We need a different type of congressman that's not beholden to the lobbyists, not beholden to the PACs. The typical congressman spends 40% of their time, 40% raising money. That's time you can't be out listening to the people, saying, what do the people need? How do we get things done? Working across the aisle, working with Republicans, Democrats, as Americans, but also practical solutions like we've done in our company. We put in free GED. We put in 2 states right now, free college tuition. We banned the box across the country in 21 states. And we've also said for our LGBT members, we're not going to discriminate. You can have health insurance too. And we did that 14 years ago before it even became a topic. We were already there, day one. So it's practical solutions, a different type of congressman, and trying to move America out of the gridlock.
Thank you. The policy issue that I'm most passionate about is clearly my family policy that I've been working on and off for 30 years. But right now, what I'm especially passionate about is the connection between the family policy, Frederick and Carroll counties, and my ability, I believe, to be a bridge builder. On a host of policies, I disagree with my distinguished colleagues, some of whom are old friends. I am a bridge builder. I've spent the last 11 years raising money from 20 state legislatures, Democrats and Republicans, governors, every possible constellation. I've developed the skills that are needed to work across the aisle. The biggest challenge any one of us will face, quite frankly, is dealing with the Republican majority in the House. Whether the Democrats keep the Senate is a separate matter. I'm ready to dive into that dysfunction, work across the aisle. With my policy background, my skill set, this is something that I feel ideally suited to do. So if you want a party line Democrat, someone who's true to traditional Democratic values on the left wing, then you should vote for one of my opponents. But if you recognize the realities in Washington now, and you want an independent voice, someone who will seek creative solutions, as my family policy is and my Social Security policy is, you can look on my website, I'm ready to work with the Republicans and actually get things done. And I've been up to Frederick and Carroll now 36 times. to the two counties, knocking on doors, hundreds and hundreds of you. And I find that you are actually more in line with my views than a lot of the folks in Montgomery County. Not all, but a lot.
Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. I think it's clear that I am very passionate about using technology, training, and education to fill 4 million unfilled jobs in the United States so we could rebuild our middle class and get people jobs that really pay great wages. You know, my grandfather, as I've said, helped to invent with his colleagues television technology, and now, ironically, I'm running against somebody who's benefited from that. I don't hold that against you, of course. But the fact of the matter is, we need to do more of that. When President Kennedy directed us to go to the moon, he didn't just put 12 people on the surface of on the lunar surface, but he ended up creating a cascade of invention that has ended up resulting in these smart devices and millions of jobs and opportunity. We have to go back to being that nation, the nation that invents the future, the nation that protects working people so that they get their fair share of that invented future. And I just want to conclude with one final thought. You know, if the infants alive today who are 1 year old, if they live to be my grandmother's age, they're going to see the very beginning of the 22nd century. And I want you to put this election in the context of how they will look back upon us. I want for them to say about America in 2016, boy, I'll tell you, they had great leaders back then, so far-sighted to have helped to put money into R&D, to defeat global warming, to make all of our electricity renewable. I think we can do that, and we can start that right now. Thank you, and I hope you can vote for me.
Thank you. If I tried to establish my climate change credentials by telling you that I walked here from Bethesda today, that would be a lie. But I'm not lying when I say we can fix Congress. And if you go to my website and you go to Litany, what is a litany? NPR, The Atlantic, and Politico. I know you don't believe it. But go there and think about this. A red state, Nebraska, voted to increase the minimum wage, voted to increase the gas tax, gave dreamers driver's licenses. And they thought, you know, I can explain to my western Nebraska cattle ranching constituent that having these kids drive around without licenses, they don't have any insurance. And they have to have a license to get insurance. And to get a license, they have to take a skills test. And my conservative Republican rancher will say, well, now that you explain it that way, I'm not going to throw you out of office for giving the dreamers licenses. And then the governor, Republican, vetoed that bill, and the Republican-dominated legislature overrode the veto. And why? Because they don't follow party line, they follow the evidence. Isn't that what we Democrats want policy to do, is to follow the evidence? So, I am a son of Indiana. I think I understand this county a little bit, haven't lived here, but I know some of the issues that you guys live with, and I would like to have your votes.
Thank you. No, we're going to take questions from the audience for a little bit, but first I just want, we can, we're going to make sure they're on the mic, so either you got a mic or I will repeat it. But before we do that, before anybody else leaves, can we give one big round of applause for Really, I mean, I hate to repeat myself, but after watching the Republican debates, I don't know if it gets more night and day than that.
Pretty low bar.
Okay, I know we have one in the middle who's been dying to ask a question, probably since he got here, so.
Yeah, no, I represent a different kind of thinking.
No problem.
That's not reflected, apparently, in leadership of the Democratic Party. I'm a farmer. I don't know if there are any other farmers here. Most of my neighbors are Republicans and think it's silly for me to be a Democrat. So I'd like to address this question and possibly a follow-up question to the only farmer, and just to the only farmer out there. We're Mr. Trump. So I've been a farmer for 44 years. I come through this area twice on my way to Washington and Baltimore, bringing my produce there during the farm season. We are, unfortunately, about to be hit with something called FSMA, which will bring FDA inspectors to all of our farms to inspect for food safety. A lot of us object to it because we have to have safe farms. We won't be in business unless we have healthy food. But nevertheless, the law is passed. We have to undergo FDA inspections on each of our farms. So my question is, your thoughts about this, and thoughts about the question of whether or not it's necessary under FSMA to have an antiseptic food system. That is, many of us think it is good and permissible to have E. coli, listeria, to actually be impacted by things, lest we come up with a sterile environment. Absolutely. So just for Mr. Trump. And I'm asking you because you've been raised on a farm.
Yeah, I apologize. First, I'm not familiar with FSMA, so I can't help on that one. But certainly, we've got to all work together to have safe products for everybody. I mean, that's absolutely crucial. I know on our farm, after it failed, when I was in graduate school, I actually brokered eggs. But what happened, that business went out of business because all the chickens caught the avian flu and died. So there's serious bad things that can happen. Avian flu can go right into influenza, and that's the next step. And that's a really bad day. So I don't have a good solution. I'm not familiar with FSMA, but I do understand the importance of thinking about the needs of everybody. At the same time, over government regulation is no damn good either.
Dan wanted to say something about it.
Before I ran a cancer immunotherapy company, I worked for many years in biomedical research, and the USDA was one of my main customers, their laboratories in Beltsville. And you're absolutely correct when you talk about a sterile environment, that particularly for young children at the age of 2 to 3, it's essential that they are exposed to a non-sterile environment in order for their immune systems to mature. And the incidence of asthma, for example, is very closely tied to too much hygiene at an early age.
We're actually, Michael, we'll get you in just a second. We've got the mic over here already, and then we'll give it to Michael after. Conrad?
Hi, I'm an independent voter. I'm registered independent, and so I'm here just kind of hearing what you have to say. I also live in northern Frederick County. How many of you on the group up here live north of Montgomery County?
Oh, it's equal.
How will you represent the constituents that live north of Frederick County, a lot of which are farmers? I've been on farms all across America, and the farmers in the West say we are not represented because they don't know what the heck we're doing out here. They don't understand agriculture. How will you understand what these farmers up here in northern Frederick County do, and how will you represent this county to the people in Washington, D.C.?
You said you're an independent voter. This is a map of...
Anybody who wants to answer can, but let's just
of the
try to keep it short.
gerrymandered Maryland 3rd District that Anna voted against. This is a non-gerrymandered state.
Yeah, backwards, but that's right.
Oh, sorry. You are disenfranchised by the gerrymanders who closed the primaries to you. And if you go to my website, you will see that I lay out a procedure approved by the Montgomery County Board of Elections that will allow you and every other independent voter to vote on April 26th in this primary legally.
Will? Oh, sure. We'll just go down.
Yeah, well,
Will and Joel.
Right. Currently, I represent Rockville and Gaithersburg in the state legislature. Gaithersburg, as I like to call South Frederick. And the fact of the matter is, many of the issues that I've had to deal with throughout my career are very similar to the ones that you might see. But most specifically, last year I negotiated the compromise between our Republican governor and our Democratic House and Senate on the implementation of phosphorus regulation of pollution into the Chesapeake Bay. And we had to do it in a way that would work for farmers. And fortunately for us, in one of the few moves that I think Larry Hogan has done correctly, he picked a conservative Democratic farmer to be his head of agriculture, and it was through that compromise vehicle that we were able to come up with a solution that the environmental community supported and the ag community supported. I was central to that compromise, and that's why I think I'm in a very good position to understand the needs of farmers throughout the state of Maryland.
Thank you. We don't know how many more questions, but let's try to keep the answers reasonably short. Is it working? And then Joel and Anna.
I'll be quick. I live in the northern part of Montgomery County, so it gets you a little closer. Also, as I mentioned, my mom lives in Manchester. She's from Kansas, from a farm town. My family had a farm in Hayes, Kansas, and I have great memories of riding around on the tractor. And so I say all that to say, I think you need someone in the seat. The gerrymandering is also a problem. It's a huge problem. We should have a question just on that. But you need someone who can talk to multiple people. You know, okay, like I said, my mom's got that Kansas background, I got my Nigerian background. I think you need someone who can talk the gamut of folks and understand needs from both and different types of communities, because that's where America's heading. As we handle these challenges of the economy and disparities and de facto segregation in our schools, you need a leader who can talk to everyone across the spectrum and sees it as their job to do that. So I can pledge to you that that would be my job. To do that, I would recommend you register as a Democrat until we get to open primary system so you can make a choice. All right,
Joel and then Anna.
So when I was a Peace Corps volunteer, I was assigned to work at a rural agricultural extension center. So for 2 years, my work was with farmers every day and with women as well, and women's farmers groups, developing projects with them on how to get their products to market. And really with the economy transitioning, and with global technology rapidly advancing, it's essential that we have members in Congress who want to work daily with people outside of the core urban areas, in this case, of the district. And that's something I bring. That's a sensitivity. I worked for Senator Harkin as well as congressional fellow, a longtime champion of rural America. I went out to Iowa on his behalf a couple of times for key issues and meetings. People feel disaffected and disconnected, and I promise that I feel that in my bones from my experience in the Peace Corps, how essential it is to keep everybody together.
Anna, and then Jamie.
Just briefly, I will continue doing what I've been doing now for over 25 years, and that's listening to my constituents and understanding what are the issues. I think that's a commitment that I can make to you, a pledge that is something that I've delivered on. I've been elected 6 times, and it comes through listening to constituents and being able to find solutions to problems. And there's a difference in these candidates. 3 of us have been doing this now for many years, and that is what we're going to continue doing. I think others who have never had the experience of resolving problems, public policy problems, budgetary problems, legislative problems, are going to have a lot to learn. And so look to see who can bring the experience and who has demonstrated that they have a record of serving our constituents. I'm delighted to expand my base to include Frederick, Carroll, and to include many, many other people that are currently not represented, because it's not only the farmers. And I would suggest that you switch, because you won't be able to vote for any of us. Thank you.
Jamie.
Thanks. You know, I want to associate myself completely with the remarks that Anna just made. You know, I represent the majority African American and Hispanic district. And I've been reelected 3 times with 99% of the vote. So there's a logic to the American system. There's a reason why people run for school board first, or as Anna did, or for delegate first, as Thurmont did, or for the state senate first, as I did. It's not only an opportunity for us to actually learn the arts and the mechanics of legislative draftsmanship and legislative strategy, but it's also an opportunity for our constituents to see, are we responsive? Are we accountable or not? I was rated the most responsive elected official in Montgomery County, and it's through a process of listening. I'm not a farmer, but I listened to that farmer right there. In fact, he brought me the idea for Maryland's Farm to Schools Act, which I introduced my first session in the Maryland Senate, and we got that passed after the tragic loss of Jane Lawton, and it is the Jane Lawton Maryland Farm to Schools Act. So I just introduced legislation to end gerrymandering through an interstate compact between Maryland and Virginia so we can get back to a situation where voters choose politicians rather than the other way around.
All right, we got David and then David. That end first, and then that David, and this David, and then we'll take one last question. Oh, Kathleen, I'm sorry, I didn't see you raise your hand. My apologies. 3 more, and then we'll one last question.
Well, if you're an independent, then I'm really your candidate, because I am the least liberal of the pack, but I am also the most inclusive, and the most inclusive in 2 ways. My national family policy reaches out to stay-at-home moms and stay-at-home dads, as well as those families that would use funding for childcare. Half the families are neglected. The second way is my campaign is heavily focused on including Frederick and Carroll counties. So I have proven already by driving up to these 2 counties in 13 different cities 36 times to talk to voters, including voters on farms, that I would be responsive to your needs. So you want to vote for someone who's not a traditional Democrat. That's why you're an independent. I'm not a traditional Democrat either. But I'm running in this race because I'm closer to the Democrats than to that other party.
David and then Kathleen.
Your point about Republicans losing a say is absolutely dead on. But at the same time, it all goes back to, as was said, gerrymandering. And the folks here in Annapolis, they brought you gerrymandering. They all voted yes, other than Anna Soul, who stood up and voted no. That's the problem. It's led to polarization throughout America. One side fights the other. It's wrong. We've got to meet in the middle. The gerrymandering did it. I get the farming piece. 18 years on a farm, 200 acres, 50,000 chickens, 600 hogs. I've been there. I've worked it. We failed, and I learned. But there's 13 tons of manure we used to get every day on our farm. I think I could use my training and have disposed of that well in Washington.
So I'm lucky because I have had a chance to represent Frederick County on the news. I came up here and I told your stories, and it's been wonderful to go door to door in your neighborhoods and knock on doors and have people tell me, do you remember me? You interviewed me back in 1985, or you interviewed me in 1995. People whose stories I have told. As a reporter, you learn how to listen. You learn how to do your research. You're open to all the information. When I first got into this race, one of the first things I did was call our Secretary of Agriculture, Tom Vilsack, who I know. His wife also ran for Congress in Iowa. And I said, Tom, what are the rural issues I should know about as I look to represent a place like Frederick County? And he gave me a briefing on that. I've continued to do that kind of research, coming up here weekly, meeting with you, having meet and greets. I'm going to a meet and greet right after this event that somebody's hosting for me, who met me at another meet and greet. Maggie, thank you. And that's how you do it. You do it by listening, you do it by distilling the information, and then you take your skills into a Congress where people don't listen, where they don't talk to each other, and you bring those listening and those negotiating and that consensus-building skill to trying to get things done.
Hang on, Jamie, since you'd already spoken on this one, let me just get the last question. Well, if we...
This is a hand raise only.
Okay, all right, if it's a hand raise question, but we obviously are only going to have time for more questions if they can be answered briefly.
I will make it very quick. Up until about a minute ago, I think it would probably have been safe to say that I'm the only Republican in the room. The other Republican just walked in, so I know there's 2 or 3.
I appreciate you pointing him out.
But I would like to say a couple things. We are not your enemy. We are Americans. In case of my point, I voted for the president twice because I thought he was the best man. And we already talked about this a little bit. In the northern part of the county, we feel like we have been completely disenfranchised. It's because of the gerrymandering. We don't even think we have a representative in Congress. So I'm going to ask you 2 questions, and one, I'm going to ask you to raise your hands. Kai asked very specifically, who wants to have an office in Frederick County? I'm going to ask you more specifically, who will have an office in northern Frederick County? Draw the line at Frederick City. Who's willing to have one up here, either in Woodsboro, Walkersville, Thurmont, or Emmitsburg?
Or Myersville.
What about the rest of the No, that's what I'm saying. I'm only focusing. The second question I have here. The second question I have here.
Libertytown counts?
Libertytown, yes. Yeah. The second question I have, you talk to a lot of people up here, Our biggest concern when I get in the morning and I want to drive to my job to Germantown, it takes me an hour and a half. An hour and a half to drive. You're going to be, whatever happens, one of you is going to be my congressman. I recognize that. Are you willing to support the widening of 270?
Yes, absolutely.
Who's not willing to support the widening of 270? Will, I didn't see you raise your hand.
You said not willing to support.
Who's willing, I want a hand raise. Who's willing to widen 270 to 3 lanes? Please raise your hands if you're willing to. Thank you. Those are my questions.
Okay. You said there were. Okay. There's short answers, and that will be it. But after that, anybody who wants to linger, some candidates will linger, some of their staff will linger. You guys come up and ask people questions. So 2 more questions if they're not too long.
This is addressed to the candidates that have no elected experience. Chris Van Hollen is held up as a role model to many of you. In fact, in your closing remarks at one of the events, Ms. Matthews, you, I think, said his name about 5 times. However, if I was Chris, I might feel as though I had failed as a teacher and a role model. Consider why Chris is so admired. He spent more than 5 years or longer as our local representative, resolving constituent issues from stop signs to potholes to access to bureaucratic mazes. He came to endless meetings. We witnessed his diplomacy, his mistakes, how he handled himself with adversity and with others across the aisle. We saw his successes and his temperament. I get the sense that many of you here are very civic-minded and know your representatives. And only after he earned our respect, trust, and confidence did he ask us to send him to higher office, first Congress and now Senate. Higher office is not an entry-level position for public office. None of your resumes measure up to Chris, nor does your gender, ethnicity, or religion give you a free pass to Congress. So when you answer the question I'm about to ask you, please don't repeat your resumes or unsupported promises that fill the airwaves ad nauseum. Why is it that if you've decided that you want to be an elected public servant at this stage in your lives, are you not running for city council, board of directors, delegate, zoning board, even state senator, and earn our trust and confidence before seeking higher office? And along with that, what is the difference between buying an election and earning our vote?
Okay, well, that's a long and difficult question, but I think you know up here who that's directed at.
Go for it.
If you've never
that was an excellent question. It's directed to me, among a couple others here as well. If there was a candidate with legislative experience who was proposing a proven, field-tested reform of Congress that had bipartisan support, that was not conjectural or hypothetical, but had been in operation for 80 years, I would step aside. So Jamie, pick up my plan and I'm out of the race. But no one's doing that. I'd encourage you. I know you're skeptical. You have a right to be skeptical, but before you say absolutely no, go look at my website, read it. Atlantic, NPR, Politico, and I think we can fix Congress.
How many more are there in that category of never? Okay, 1, 2, 3, and then I know there's a couple people who have more to say than that. Whatever. Okay, let's try to keep them short, but we'll start with the people who never run for office.
It's a very good question. Actually, 50% of those serving in the House of Representatives have served in the state legislature, and 50% have not. So just to start off, there's nothing unusual about someone running for a House seat who has not served in Congress. I have extensive political experience. I've worked in 20 state legislatures, raising money for college students, working with Democrats and Republicans and the governors, senators, representatives. So I've been preparing for this race all my life. It's really kind of question-begging, quite frankly, to say there is only one route, to get to Congress, or to get to the Senate, or to get to the presidency. This is not 1920. This is the 21st century. We're thinking outside of the box. So there are people here who are career politicians, and quite frankly, many people think we have enough career politicians and millionaires on Capitol Hill. There is not one way to get to Congress.
Let me just point out that some of us also have jobs outside the
Yeah,
legislature.
but Kumar, let's just speak first to the people who've never run for office. So, if you've never run for office.
Well, I have run for office. I did
Or held office. Held office.
I'm happy to go since it goes this way. Everyone wants to be last. The premise, there you are, I'm sorry. The premise of your question, Dave mentioned, it's about half and half in Congress. The premise would mean that, one, there's only one way to actually have the knowledge and skills that are necessary to move the agenda forward, and it would suggest that the current system is working, okay? And I would suggest to you that it's maybe not. And it's less because of whether you serve the state legislature, it's more because the Congress is so homogeneous in life experience and types of people that are there, even if they have served in the state legislature. You talked about the 90% of our elected officials nationwide who are white, the 53% who are millionaires in Congress, highest number ever. Another thing that Chris did, and we've talked about this a lot, is he was a Senate Foreign Relations staff. And if you ask anyone, ask Sherrod Brown, my boss, or Nancy Pelosi, who does most of the work in Congress, they'll tell you it's the staff. And I think that that's an invaluable skill set, just because of the time and the way it has to operate. But the main thing I'll say is that, and I did run for delegate, I ran for the State House in District 20, because my goal is impact. And I think I have a nice set of skills, both life experience and having moved an agenda forward in Congress at the staff level with Republicans. And I think the seat that this was 14 years ago is not the seat it is now. We're more diverse, we're a lot different, the country's in a different place, and I think we need something different in Congress.
Nobody has a right to this seat. Everybody here has to earn it. And that's why I got into this race 9 months ago. I quit my job because I wanted to serve. And in that 9 months, my volunteer field team has made 300,000 phone calls or door knocks. I personally have knocked on more than 1,000 doors and made more than 5,000 phone calls, trying to reach all of you and talk to you and hear what you care about. And if you take a look at people in Congress, we need broad experience. We need problem solvers. We need people who bring really diverse background to trying to make this thing work. And I don't think there's a cookie-cutter resume that qualifies you to run for Congress. You need to have a mix of experience. And that's why I'm running, because I think I bring the mix of knowing you on the local level, telling your stories, listening, communicating them, advocating for you, and then I also bring national and international experience from business. And you've got to do both in this job. You've got to represent the people, be their voice, but you've also got to tackle some national and global problems. And I look at people I admire, people like Hillary Clinton, people like Senator Kirsten Gillibrand, people like Elizabeth Warren. None of them had elective experience before they first ran for the House or the Senate. And so I'm very proud. I'm in here, and I'm in here for you. And I just think that to consider this something that somebody is owed or has already earned or that it's a re-election is not the way we should look at this race. It's your choice.
Yeah, thanks, Kat. I don't believe there's a funnel that appoints people, and that if you didn't get elected when you were in your early 20s, you'll never get a chance to run for Congress. But I got motivated to run for not just for the fact that I've gotten things done in Congress. It was when I testified to the Benghazi Select Committee towards the end of January last year. And you can look at it, it's on C-SPAN's website. 2.5 hours, I stood up to the right wing in basically the chamber that was excoriating not just me and my colleagues, but later on, Secretary Clinton, former Secretary Clinton. And I dealt with that and I fought back. And I thought, you know, if we don't go in there and fight every day, we're not going to win on the big fights overall. And I came home that day, and my daughters saw the testimony, and I was really excited to ask them, what do you think? How did it go? And my oldest daughter said to me, well, Daddy, why did they keep on interrupting you? That is not the lesson we can have, people. My wife is a Republican staffer on the Hill, just to go to the previous question. Every day, I engage in diverse thinking and dialogue. Trust me, when I tell you there's Republican oversight, I know what I mean. And honestly, I believe that all of us bring qualities that will be an incredible asset to our district come next year. Thank you.
I think really everybody nailed it really well. I mean, Joel, Kathleen, Will did a great job on that. David, of course. I mean, we can't let that 0.5% that are chosen politics as their entire life rule America. We need change. We need something different. And if you've only ever done politics and all you care about is the next election, and you're beholden to the special interests who are pulling America apart, that's not the America I want my kids to be growing up in.
Hi, you have to allow me first.
Make it really quick, because I just found out that there's another group scheduled to have this room at 3:30.
Sure. Maryland's legislature is a citizen legislature. In addition to being a delegate and the majority leader, I'm also the chief financial officer of a small environmental company in Rockville, Maryland. And I know my other colleagues here have jobs outside of the legislature as well. Listen, to denigrate me or somebody else as being a career politician is to be ignorant of the kind of sacrifices I've had to undertake. I earn a lot less money as a legislator and an accountant than I would have if I had never run for office. I do it because I love public service, and I also do it because I see the value in having one foot in each world. I am in the private sector, as I have been my entire adult life, and I'm a state legislator, and I'm damn proud of all.
It's interesting to end on a question that there's definitely not entire agreement about up here. I know we had another question, but unless it can be answered with like a raise of a hand or a yes or no, we've really got to vacate the room and clean things up in the next 15 minutes. The candidates some of them will still be lingering. They all have materials here for you. Please come say hello, say thank you, get to know them, and thank you all for coming.
So much for that.